children of class 9ers. So once again we are back with your drama portion, and today we shall be continuing with the portion that we had left incomplete in the previous virtual class. And before we move ahead with the final part, the second part and the final part, let us just recapitulate what we discussed in the previous virtual class. So in the previous virtual class, what we discussed was we saw Nerissa and Portia discussing about the characteristic traits of all those suitors who were already at the court of Portia, who wanted to win the hand of Portia, who were there out there to win who were there to face the trial of the casket system that had been drawn as per the will of her dead father. We saw her expressing her frustration and deep sadness for the inability of not being able to choose the person that she wishes to be with, nor reject the person whom she disliked, And after that we see, a great amount of intelligence and wit in the way Portia describes all those suitors. So there were 6 suitors that we discussed in the previous class, right? The 6 suitors are first the Prince of Naples, Neapolitan prince, who was a person who was no different from a colt, who only talked about his horse and who boasted about his ability to shoe his horse as if it was a great achievement. And the next we talked about Count Palatine. And this Count Palatine was a person who would frown all the time. And Portia feared that if he would continue at that rate, if he continues to frown at that rate at such a young age, when he would grow old, he would definitely become the second weeping philosopher Heraclitus. She says about Count Palatine. Then we have the French Lord. The French Lord who has both the habits of Prince of Naples as well as Count Palatine. He has the habit of talking about his horse, but he talks more than Prince of Naples does. And he also has the habit of Count Palatine, and that is the habit of frowning. He frowns, but out here the only difference is that French Lord Monsieur Le Bon, he frowns more than Count Palatine. And besides all these characters, French Lord seems to have multiple characters inside him, where at once he is happy, the other time he is fighting with his sword against fencing and dueling with his own shadow, and the other moment, the minute he hears the thrush sing, he immediately lands up capering. He starts dancing to the music of the... So basically, French Lord was a man, every man in no man, as said by Portia. Thereby, by describing them in a mocking manner, we can see her rejecting them. We can see her dislike towards all these suitors. And then we have the Falcon Bridge, whom she mocks as somebody who is very ignorant about the foreign languages and who dresses up very oddly, and the Scottish Lord who is a coward, and the German Duke who is a drunkard. So, and towards the end, out here we see, for the first time we see, as she talks about, after she having talked about the German Lord, for the first time we see her reluctance to accept the will of her father. And that reluctance, how we see is that, Nerissa points out that what in case German Lord happens to choose the right casket, and if you reject him, it will be like you directly rejecting the will of your father. So at that point of time, immediately, Portia, she comes up with a strategy. She wants Nerissa to help out with a stratagem to drive away German Lord from choosing the right casket by placing a deep glass of Rhenish wine on top of the contrary casket. For she knew that this German Lord, being a drunkard, he would definitely be tempted to drink the wine, and while being tempted to drink that wine of glass, he will land up by mistake choosing the wrong casket, and that was the stratagem she plans on devising in order to drive away the German lord. So there we see her rejection of all these suitors, her hatred towards all her suitors. And then what happens? Let's see thereafter. Now hereafter we shall move ahead. So I will direct you, we are in page number 34 of your textbook, line number 112. Okay, line 112, where we shall start with the dialogue of Nerissa. So Nerissa, you need not fear, fair lady, the having any of these lords. They have acquainted me with their determination, which is indeed to return to their home and to trouble you with no more suit, unless you may be won by some other sort than your father's imposition, depending on the caskets. So, finally, Nerissa, after having this long discussions, finally, she reveals the decision that has been, the information that she had been forwarded to by all those suitors, that had been brought to her notice, but she hadn't opened it up yet to Portia, and now she decides to open after having seen the level of frustration and hatred that Portia carried in her heart against them. And also, mind you, out here we also see, besides the frustration and the hatred towards these suitors, we also see the level of her frustration that that was there inside her towards her dead father's will, which obviously she will not break. She has, although she does not break, she will not break, but yet she is reluctantly accepting it. So from there we also get to know that Portia, she plays by rules. Okay, so then Nerissa reveals a good news, and the good news being that all these suitors, they have made a unanimous decision, and that unanimous decision is to return back home, return back to their respective homeland, because they did not want to win Portia's hand in the manner and the procedure drawn by the dead father, by Portia's, drawn by the will of Portia's dead father. Alright, so they found it absurd, and they left an information at Nerissa's hand, saying that they would return. Not that they were rejecting Portia, but they would definitely want to win her hand only if she chooses the manner and the procedure of winning her hand. So that was the condition that they had laid, that they thought about, they together thought and talked about, and thereby came to a unanimous decision and left this information at the hand of Nerissa to be delivered to Portia. And what is the reaction of Portia? What she says, let's see. If I live to be as old as Sibylla, I will die as chaste as Diana, unless I be obtained by the manner of my father's will. I am glad this parcel of wooers are so reasonable, for there is not one among them but I dote on his very absence, and I pray God grant them a fair departure. So, now out here, not in this scene, not only do we see her beauty, her virtuous quality, not only do we see her high level of intelligence and wit, with so much of sarcasm that she has in her, but we also see her loyalty towards her father. Father who is no more, father who is already deceased, who has left behind a will, So that amount of loyalty we see when she says, after hearing that these suitors would return only if she would win the change the procedure of winning her, she immediately says that, she would never ever change the manner of the procedure of choosing her in the hand of marriage. Is she says that I will never ever change even if I have to remain as old as Sibylla, and if I have to die a virgin like Diana. So these two figures, Sibylla and Diana. So talking about Sibylla first, let's talk about Sibylla. Sibylla was a prophetess. A prophetess who had been gifted, who had been given a gift by goddess Apollo, the gift of agelessness. Alright, so she was blessed with that. And Diana was the goddess of moon and hunting, and also chastity. Alright, so she says that, even if she has to grow as old as Sibylla or die as old as Sibylla, or even if she has to die as die a virgin, still she will never ever change the will of her father. She would like to stick to the will of her father. That itself shows how loyal a daughter was, Portia. Then she is happy and she expresses her gladness that these people, they seem to be reasonable, that they have reasonable on taking the decision to depart. For I will never ever regret the departure of any of them, because I do not dote them at all. I do not love them at all. So it was good, better off that they left. And I hope that they have a safe journey back home. Then Nerissa says, all of a sudden, then she draws her attention back to somebody else. Nerissa says, do you not remember, lady, in your father's time, a Venetian, a scholar and a soldier that came hither in company of Marcus of Montferrat? So, don't you remember, lady, my lady? During your father's time, when your father was alive, there came a Venetian scholar in the company of Marcus of Montferrat. What need was his? And immediately Portia says, yes, it was Bassanio. So here we see that she had a clear and a vivid memory of Bassanio. And directly what we see out here is that instantaneously we also get an impression that, we get an idea that Portia actually was quite interested in Bassanio, had been interested then, and now also all of a sudden, after the initiation of talk of Bassanio by Nerissa, she immediately also becomes interested. Alright, and we also clearly see that she clearly, vividly remembers Bassanio. So yes, I think so was he called. Nerissa, true madam, he of all the men that ever my foolish eyes looked upon was the best deserving of fair lady. I tell you, ma'am, as far as my eyes are concerned, to all the suitors that I have seen and come across, I feel that Bassanio, that Venetian lord, is the best deserving candidate for you, my fair lady. Then Portia says, I remember him well, and I remember him worthy of thy praise. So it seems that she has accepted, though she does not directly, but inwardly she has accepted that truly whatever Portia said, that it was true. Okay? That Bassanio was worthy of all those praise. So at that point of time enters a servant. How now? What news? Now the servant has brought some news. The servant says, the 4 strangers seek for you, madam, to take their leave. So these 4 strangers are referred to those suitors amongst these 6 suitors who have decided to take departure. So, who have to take their leave, and there is a forerunner come from a 5th. The Prince of Morocco, who brings word the prince, his master, will be here tonight. So, while the 6th whom finally gives, leaving behind an information that they would be leaving for their respective home, that gives some amount of joy and relief to Portia. She hasn't even enjoyed she hasn't been able to enjoy that moment even for an hour or so, even for a minute. At that point of time comes a servant with a news that would definitely not make her happy. Her happiness seemed to have short-lived, for the servant comes with an announcement that there comes another suitor, and in fact that suitor will be dawning at Portia's court that very night to try out his hand at winning Portia. So, and that suitor happened to be even more different from all these suitors, the 6 suitors whom Portia felt that she did not share any common ground with them. So, and Prince Morocco was somebody who was even more alien to Portia. In fact, Portia was alien to Morocco's culture, ethnicity, mannerism, the way of life, everything. So that was the bad news that we see. And as we discuss this, what we also see that Portia was actually trying to find out somebody with whom she could share things wherein they share common grounds, where they share the likeliness of liking each other, as well as to find somebody with whom she would have things in common. All right, and that she did not find neither in any of these 6 suitors, nor, and let alone Prince of Morocco, who is completely from a different level, who is completely alien to her culture, and not just her culture, even she is completely unknown to the kind of place, the race, as well as the ethnicity that Morocco comes from. So Portia says, if I could bid the 5th welcome with so good heart as I can bid the other 4 well, I should be glad of his approach. If he have the condition of a saint and the complexion of a devil, I'd rather he should shrive me than wive me. I'd be more than happy. So here she expresses her displeasure once again on hearing the arrival of Prince of Morocco, who comes from a complete different background, a background that is even more alien to Portia than the 6 suitors that we discussed about. And she wishes that, she makes a wish that, I would rather wish this person Morocco to, instead of trying to wife me, I wish that he forgive me for not being able to like him, because definitely she know, and we also know that she will not, he is not somebody that she will like, nor would she wish to marry. So come Nerissa, Sirrah, go before, while we shut the gates upon one wooer, another knocks at the door. So while we from here, what we see of Portia is she has some amount of ethnic prejudice. Ethnic prejudice that she has against all these suitors, for they did not share any common ground. And what Portia wants and is looking forward to in her suitor is somebody who has and who shares a common ground. Like for example, Bassanio in her case. For she's in that short discussion, in that short conversation about Bassanio, we clearly see her like we are for the first time we are given hope. That hopefulness arises that at least there is somebody of Portia's liking, and that person is Bassanio. Alright, for she feels and she knows that the two of them, they share quite a common ground. Alright, and so in this manner, what we see is this scene, the Act 1 of Merchant of Venice, Act 1, both the scenes, they display 2 different plots, 2 important main plots that has been displayed and discussed. Act 1, Scene 1 discusses about one important plot, and that is The